I'm Kyle O'Donnell, host of the Small Town Justice podcast. On the last season, I uncovered the crime spree that rocked the Florida Panhandle.
They finally got me in jail.
In this season, I exposed the fraud ring led by the man who taught that convict everything he knows.
This is Michael McKay.
But this time, the case is live and currently unfolding, and now it appears to be a family affair.
My son, unfortunately, has had some issues with being straight up with money. He learned some of that from me.
Find Small Town Justice wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. Adolescent puppy love. We all remember being teenagers who thought we were in love. The thrill of having a boy or girl fawn over you and want to spend their time with you. And we remember the breakups that may not have ended so well. As teenagers, we were managing the good and bad events in life that we had no prior experience with, and we were learning about ourselves more than ever. Teenagers often think the world revolves around them. Not that they don't have empathy, but selfish ways can often overshadow that. It's all about what they want and getting instant gratification. All the things teenagers normally experience, like puppy love, arguments, figuring out life as they go along, learning how to treat others and how to behave, trying to figure out who they are, learning how to drive, being rebellious, possibly experimenting with drugs and alcohol, and much more, while trying to manage all of their schoolwork, maintain good grades, focus on their academic future, have a social life outside of school, make time for family, and possibly go through a difficult home life or processing family drama. On top of all of those things, social media is a playground for bullying and harassment for some, instead of being used for fun and entertainment. Teenage years can be rough. Teenagers are complicated, but then there are some teenagers who show narcissistic behaviors. Being selfish and having different issues with self-esteem is normal at that age, to an extent. Teenagers who have narcissistic traits may feel that they are superior to others. Their egos can be inflated. They might exaggerate their accomplishments. Being manipulative with no remorse, not having empathy towards others, not grasping the concept that other people have wants and needs. Arrogance, striving to be the most popular person, thinking they can outwit and outsmart everyone because they believe they are the most intelligent. Obsessed with how they look, fixated on what others think about them, severe depression and anxiety issues that may go unnoticed because they do seem so confident, as well as never admitting when they are in the wrong and refusing to acknowledge that they have a problem. When you have a teenager with narcissistic traits in a relationship with a naive, kind, empathetic partner, they can easily manipulate them, control them, and worse. They seek attention and validation from their peers, no matter what they have to do to get it, possibly even kill for it. This is the story of 15-year-old Rebecca Aylward, whose life was taken too soon by her 15-year-old boyfriend, Joshua Davis. Let's begin. Rebecca Aylward was born on February 28, 1995, to her mother Sonia Oatley in Maesteg, South Wales. She attended Archbishop McGrath Catholic School and was described as ambitious, lovely, funny, bubbly, always happy, energetic, and kind, among many other beautiful adjectives. Rebecca was also the eldest of 3 children. In 2009, her brother Jack was around 9 or 10 years old, and her sister Jessica was around 13. The bond they had as siblings was unbreakable. They adored and looked up to their big sister, always clinging on to her, and Rebecca loved them to the moon and back. Rebecca was also extremely close to her mother Sonia. She had dreams of becoming a barrister and was well on her way. Rebecca was a driven, very bright, straight-A student. She had a good head on her shoulders at only 14 years old. Her parents got a divorce in June of 2009. Sonia, Rebecca, Jack, and Jessica had just moved into a new house. Rebecca was not getting along very well with her father, and she was very encouraging and sympathetic towards her mother, as she was mentally and emotionally dealing with the divorce the best she could. As a little time went by, Rebecca, like many young teenagers, was bitten by the love bug. Joshua Davis and Rebecca met when they were in 2nd grade. Ever since then, they had been really great friends. Even their families were familiar with each other, as all of their kids who were around the same ages would bounce back and forth between both houses to hang out together. Joshua is the eldest of his siblings, born to Haley and Stephen Davis. They were described as nice, great parents who have a loving relationship with their children. Joshua wasn't known to be a troublemaker. He never had run-ins with the police, and a lot of people thought he was charming and delightful. However, we will come to find out that not everyone viewed him in this light. Rebecca and Joshua began dating in 2009. Rebecca's mother and siblings adored Joshua. They even thought of him as family, since they'd known him for such a long time. Little Jack and Jessica admired Joshua. They followed him around everywhere and thought he was the coolest guy in the world. Sonia thought he was an excellent teenager, and he even promised to always protect her daughter. Any parent would be comforted by hearing that their child is in good hands with their partner. Joshua has been referred to as talented, strong, nice, and a sports lover who was also rugby training. He was perceived by several others as someone who thought he was better than everyone else, very cocky, and always thirsty for attention. He was the ringleader of his friend group, popular, and the opinion of Joshua overall seems to be that people either loved him or hated him. Not everything was as lovely as it appeared to be when it came to Rebecca and Joshua's relationship. This being the first relationship they'd both ever been in, they had no experience at all. It was puppy love. At least, that's what Rebecca felt. But when it came to Joshua, it was all about being in control. The 2 teenagers were always breaking up and getting back together. Sometimes even their parents didn't know if they were dating or not, because they were on again, off again so frequently. The 2 argued quite a bit, and Joshua was defined as being an alpha male with narcissistic traits. For Rebecca to keep up with him in an argument could have either been, as some speculate, a turn-on to him, and he enjoyed sparring with her, or, on the flip side, it could have been something he couldn't handle due to his ego. The fact that she could outwit him and use her intelligence to hang with him in a battle of words is something abusers cannot cope with. They perceive a simple disagreement as a sign of disrespect. Joshua had a craving to be in control all the time. Rebecca kept a journal, and she wrote in it a lot. Journaling one's thoughts is and should be private. It's deeply personal and only for oneself. However, Joshua demanded to read her writings to see if she had written anything negative about him. This kept on until Rebecca began stashing her journal in her mother's room inside of a drawer where Joshua could not find it. Rebecca shared everything with her mother, so she didn't mind it being in her care. Joshua always wanted to know what other people thought of him. He cared deeply, to the point of obsession, about others' opinions of him. Joshua would also disseminate rumors about Rebecca. He once informed everyone he could at their high school that Rebecca was pregnant, which circulated through the school hallways like wildfire, becoming the latest hot gossip. Joshua told Rebecca to go along with it. Since she did believe she loved him so much, and she was loyal to him to a fault, she would go along with the lies. In January of 2010, the young couple had a seemingly blissful, wonderful, idyllic weekend. It couldn't have gone any better, and Rebecca felt closer to her boyfriend than ever. Joshua even said it was the best weekend he had ever had. The next day, to Rebecca's shock and dismay, he texted her and broke up with her yet again. He said he was talking to someone else. It took the wind right out of Rebecca's sails. She didn't understand why he would end things when they just spent a truly terrific weekend together. That was a manipulative, calculated move. Joshua wanted it to be a fabulous weekend for Rebecca, to make her feel like she was on top of the world, all to completely crush her on purpose. He liked to hurt her, to break her spirit, and push her away. That would make him feel important and mighty when she wanted him back in her life. This time, it didn't go as Joshua wanted it to. Rebecca was done. She didn't go to Joshua and beg for him, like she would typically do. Days turned into months as Joshua watched Rebecca move on with her life. He would harass her at school, telling her that she could never be with anyone else because her mom loved him the best and would not like any other guy as much as she did him. He even warned Rebecca that he would make her life a living hell and threatened her life at times. Unfortunately, he could manipulate everyone because he was so popular and, as mentioned before, the head honcho of his pack of friends, who all liked Rebecca. Before long, he had everyone push Rebecca out of their circle of friends. Isolation, another tactic used by abusers. Joshua wished for her to feel unwanted, alone, and miserable. In achieving that, he felt in control and entirely powerful once again. However, Rebecca persevered and didn't look back. She was determined to make the best of her life. We can imagine how upset and infuriated he became when she did start dating someone else, also named Josh. After 9 months went by, Rebecca received a text message from Joshua Davies in October of 2010. He wanted her to meet with him to give him a chance to talk. Rebecca was ecstatic about that because she did miss him a lot. The feelings of teenage love overcame her. The thoughts of getting back together with the only boy she had ever had feelings for made her happy, regardless of his awful behavior, which she knew was wrong. But she still cared about him deeply. She was so excited that the day before they would see each other in Aberconfig, she went and bought new clothes to wear the day of. The morning of the meetup, October 23rd, Rebecca took a lot of time getting dolled up to see Joshua. She asked her mother if she would be nice to him if he came over someday after their meeting. All Rebecca wanted was for Joshua to love her. She had her hopes up and was already thinking of things working out. Rebecca's Aunt Linda was to drive Rebecca to get with Joshua. Rebecca left home that day in a red jacket and brown ankle boots, embracing her mother and giving her a kiss as they said their goodbyes and I love yous. As her daughter looked back one final time as she was getting into her aunt's car, Sonia felt and saw the anticipation, the excitement that radiated inside and out of her wonderful daughter. Linda was going back to Aberconfig to pick her up at a certain time to take her niece home. When she dropped Rebecca off, she waited and waited, wondering where Joshua was, when she suddenly received a text. He told her to meet her at one location, and when she would finally arrive, he would text her another spot to go to. It was like a chaotic scavenger hunt for Joshua. She was on foot, going from place to place, completely alone. Not only is that vulnerability terrifying, but promising to be at each location and not showing up, was Joshua purposely toying with her emotions. Rebecca was getting flustered and called her mother. Sonia felt that something wasn't right and told her daughter to pack it in and come home. Just as she said that, Joshua appeared. To make sure her daughter was safely in Joshua's care, Sonia wanted to hear him. Once she heard the two together and trusted things were fine, Rebecca and her mother hung up with one last I love you. The two 15-year-olds were there for entirely different reasons. Rebecca was there in hopes of rekindling their relationship, but Joshua was there to take her life. This wasn't something that was a spur-of-the-moment decision either. In the months leading up to this, Joshua sent messages to his friends via text message and Facebook, where he talked about killing Rebecca. Those friends claimed they didn't alert anyone about what he said because they never thought he was serious. Joshua talked of poisoning Rebecca using deadly nightshade or pushing her into a river and drowning her, making it seem like an accident. Strangely enough, Rebecca did fall terribly ill after the mentions of deadly nightshade. Later, it was reported that Joshua had researched poisoning methods and deadly nightshade online. Stick a pin in that information because we will come back to the deadly nightshade. A week or so before October 23rd, Joshua again was talking about murdering Rebecca. He sent a text to his friend asking, "What would you do if I actually did kill her?" His friend replied, "Oh, I'd buy you breakfast, mate." More text messages before he and Rebecca's meetup were sent back and forth. Joshua sent this message to a friend a day or two before the meetup. "Don't say anything, but you may just owe me a breakfast." His friend responded, "Best text I've ever had, mate. Seriously, if it's true, I'm happy to buy you breakfast." Joshua said, "I hope by then it will be done and dusted." His friend replied, "I want all of the details, you sadistic bastard," with a smiley face. And Joshua's response, "Large breakfast with extras of everything." His friend replied, "Sick, sick boy." On October 23rd, he was with some of his friends earlier in the day, and he was departing from them to go meet Rebecca when he sinisterly said, "The time has come." Again, none of the teenage boys thought anything of it. Allegedly, they thought of it as Joshua blowing off steam with a twisted, dark sense of humor. No one believed he could actually do such a thing in a million years. On the 23rd of October, however, those so-called jokes and vile messages became a horrible reality. Rebecca and Joshua were in the woods when he lunged towards her, attempting to strangle her and break her neck. He failed at his attempt. As Rebecca screamed and cried, he picked up a massive rock, as big as a rugby ball, and too heavy to hold in one hand. Joshua began to bludgeon Rebecca until her last dying breath. Afterwards, one of his friends called him and asked if he was still hanging out with Rebecca, to which he responded, "Define with." At some point, he took two of his friends to see Rebecca's body, and they still did not say anything. Joshua told them how difficult it was physically to try and break her neck. He sung his own praises, boasting about how he attacked her, and said the most awful part of it all was feeling her skull cave in. As we will learn, the premeditation of her murder may have been more in-depth than anyone fathomed. The intent behind bringing his friends to the scene was in case he needed to place the blame on someone else. Joshua even tried to coerce one of the boys into pulling back the hood of Rebecca's jacket that was covering her head. Joshua secretly wanted the boy's fingerprints to be left behind, but his friend could not bring himself to go near Rebecca's body. Leaving the scene of this horrific killing, the 15-year-old and one of the boys went back to Joshua's grandmother's, where Joshua began feverishly creating his own alibi by posting on Facebook that he was hanging out with his friends watching a horror movie. At some point, he updated his Facebook status to say he had a great time with his friends and a lovely breakfast. That night, knowing Rebecca was lying in the woods, deceased, he sent a text message to her phone, begging her to let people know where she was. Sonia knew something was wrong when her daughter never showed back up at the time she was supposed to, and she reported Rebecca missing right away. She knew her daughter better than anyone. They constantly kept in communication with one another, and Rebecca would never choose to not call her mother if she was going to be running late. The police could not find Rebecca or any trace of her that day or night. They remarkably got a phone call the next morning, October 24th, from one of the teenage boys close to Joshua. He had gotten worried that maybe Joshua really did do something to Rebecca, and that's why she was missing. The friend was a bit shaken up and concerned. He went to his father about the messages he had received and how Rebecca had bizarrely gone missing. The next morning, Joshua and his close friend with him at his grandmother's were taken into custody under suspicion that one of them was the killer. Joshua blamed his friend for Rebecca's murder and proclaimed that he himself was innocent. He claimed that he and Rebecca played a prank on their friend. Rebecca pretended to be dead, but instead of thinking it was funny, allegedly their friend flipped out and killed her. Now the police had the task of figuring out the truth to the blame game the boys were playing. During the investigation, authorities spoke to Rebecca and Joshua's friends and classmates. The questionings uncovered the many falsehoods that Joshua had distributed about Rebecca, all of the hateful, threatening messages he sent online to his buddies, and later text messages would unveil more aggressive, vile messages about Rebecca to his friends expressing his desire to kill her, which had been portrayed by Joshua as measly jokes. The police were told by multiple kids about the hate campaign at school pioneered by Joshua, leading everyone to fall for his twisted plan. Rebecca was casted out of their friend groups because of him and his manipulation of others. It was becoming clear that the other teenager in custody was not being brought up at all. The spotlight was on Joshua Davis. When the police went to Joshua's grandmother's home to investigate, they found out it was likely not a fluke that Rebecca had been so unwell due to severe stomach pains that kept her out of school and in the hospital. Not only had Joshua conducted his own research about foxglove and deadly nightshade online, but he was in possession of both deadly plants which he had mixed together. Rebecca had been tested for many different ailments, but the cause of her intense stomach pains and intestinal problems remained a mystery. The police seized the fatal mixture of plants from his grandmother's house. The authorities talked to Rebecca's mother, Sonia, about the last phone conversation she and Rebecca had on the 23rd when Joshua was clearly heard on the phone with her daughter. All the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, and police were certain Joshua was the last person to see the hopeful, happy teenager alive. Finally, the timeline of Rebecca's last day was all sorted out. Due to the events of that day, starting with Joshua's text messages leading her all around to different locations near the forested area where she was discovered, all of his phone records, the texts and Facebook messages between Joshua and his friends, the poison found in his grandmother's house, the two boys who confessed that they were led by Joshua to see Rebecca's body, and forensic evidence of how Rebecca's life ended was plenty enough to charge Joshua Davis for her murder. In June of 2011, then 16-year-old Joshua Davies' trial began at Swansea Crown Court. Many newspapers' headlines read, "Teenage boy killed for a free breakfast," and he was being called the breakfast bet killer. Joshua showed up to court exceptionally calm, smiling, and seemed confident. He was convinced he wasn't going to be convicted and even had his parents under his thumb, believing their son did not commit this awful act. He sat in the courtroom smugly the entire time. As the two boys who saw Rebecca Aylward's body were testifying against Joshua and all of the evidence was being exposed, he didn't seem to be fazed by any of it at all. Over the course of the trial, which lasted 5 weeks, all was revealed. There was an answer as to why Joshua sent Rebecca on a strange goose chase to find him. It was a route strategically planned, a route with no security cameras. Joshua had a backup strategy planned out in case anyone had spotted her on her way to the woods. One of the areas she had to pass on her route was near the other Josh's home, but the Joshua she had been seeing, Joshua Davies, planned to claim that this is where Rebecca was going that day if anyone testified to seeing her. With the prosecution presenting damning evidence, one thing after the other, Joshua continued to insist he did not murder Rebecca, and actually the other boy who was testifying against him, who saw Rebecca's body, committed the crime. Throughout the whole trial, Joshua maintained his innocence and was overly sure of himself. He appeared as if he did not believe he would ever actually be behind bars. After the jury had heard every callous, wretched detail about Joshua and Rebecca's turbulent relationship, the events that led up to October 23rd, The overwhelming amount of evidence found on his phone, the timeline of Rebecca's last day, and the pathology report, it was time for them to deliberate. Joshua was found guilty of Rebecca Aylward's tragic death and sentenced to life imprisonment with no chance of parole until he served 14 years. The judge said during his sentencing, "You have shown yourself to be devious, calculating, and controlling. You have shown no remorse. You killed Rebecca in the most brutal way when you struck her repeatedly to the back of her head with a heavy stone, fragmenting her skull. Her death will leave a permanent shadow over her family, who are devastated. You and Rebecca were boyfriend and girlfriend, but that relationship ended with some bitterness on both sides. Over a period of months, you told friends you were going to kill her. They didn't think you were serious, and they became bored by your repeated threats against Rebecca, but you held a deep-seated hatred towards her, which ultimately led you to kill her. You admitted to your two friends you had killed Rebecca. You thought their loyalty to you would prevent them from telling the truth. You then posted onto Facebook that the three of you had enjoyed a normal afternoon together. You also sent 3 text messages to Rebecca's mobile phone to a girl you knew lay dead. Almost 1 year after Rebecca's murder, Joshua posted to Facebook from behind prison bars, where he was only supposed to use a computer for educational purposes. On October 6th, 3 days after Amanda Knox was cleared and declared innocent by an Italian court for the death of British student Meredith Kircher, he wrote, "I was glad to hear about Amanda Knox, even though she was jailed for 4 years and it turns out she's innocent. Hopefully it won't take that long for the truth to come out in my case. This is why the death penalty should not be brought back, as a lot of innocent people would die." Joshua even wrote that he would be the next Foxy Knoxy. A prison service spokesman said, "Prisoners are barred from updating Facebook while serving their sentence or asking others to do so from the outside. If they do, their accounts will be terminated. If a prisoner is found in illicit possession of a mobile phone or other contraband, they will be dealt with appropriately by the prison." In 2014, Sonia wrote a book that she described as a diary for her, Jack, and Jess. She said if they ever wanted to know anything, it would be in the book. Sonia hoped her book would help any young person in an abusive relationship, any parents who may have either gone through the same tragedy or who may have realized some red flags that she didn't recognize until much later on. Sonia said, "When I think back, if he would stay over, I would subconsciously tell Jack to tidy away his toy swords or dressing gown ties. I would take them all into my room, but I didn't have a clue why. Once on TV, the Ku Klux Klan was on, and he said he would love to be one of them. He said he would love doing what they are doing. Rebecca just hit him in the ribs and said, 'What are you saying?' That set off alarm bells. Rebecca thought that he was joking, but he was very racist. He used to walk around the streets at 3 in the morning as well. It was very odd behavior, but I only found out about that later. If I'd known, it would have been different." In 2018, 8 years after Rebecca's death, Joshua finally confessed. Sonia worries he only at long last came clean about what he did for a chance of an early release. She said, "He woke up, asked to see someone, I'm guessing a probation officer, and said I did it. He told them before he told anyone else, even his family." Joshua Davis will be eligible for parole in October of 2024. That is the story of Rebecca Aylward's tragic murder committed by Joshua Davies. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay safe and take care.